All right, everybody, we are live for another episode of The List. Jordan, it has been a while. We have not seen each other in a couple weeks. How you doing, bud?
Yeah, our schedules keep missing each other. I get a week, you get a week, and here we are back just in time for the season to start.
Yep, and of course it was Labor Day weekend. Great week. Great weekend because it means college football started. Before we get into college football, how was it? Do anything fun for your extended weekend?
I laid back and thought about everything to do with you eating hot sauce live on air.
Yes.
I had been seeing the rumblings, but while we only have three people here, why don't you tell us a little more about the hot sauce and what is
Okay.
happening behind the bit?
All right. So Mr. S is kind of a turd because he kept putting the wrong thing in the tweet saying that I am going to drink hot sauce on air. I will do crazy stuff, but I was not. The idea was never to drink hot sauce. So people asked me about that. Caught me off guard because I never realized that. The original challenge was there is an Indian food market right by my house, and they have the extra spicy ramen that you can't get in like regular stores. But they also have some of the hotter hot sauces too. So what I was going to do is if we got to on Twitter over 1,000 followers, which we now are, shout out to Mr. S. As much as you drive us crazy, you do a great job on social media.
Yes, he does.
You did get us over 1,000, and I said if we were over 1,000 before the start of the season, I would get the ramen, the spiciest ramen, but also add spicy hot sauce onto it so that I will be hurting, and I will do that live on stream. Um, We'll figure out when to do that because the only reason I'm trying to figure out is Zach said something about him and I doing the one chip challenge live on stream. So we're going to see if he actually wants to do that. If we are, we will set up that so he and I can do that live. Um, Otherwise, I will be getting extra spice, like some of the spiciest ramen you can buy, getting some hot sauce, and I will prepare it all on air and eat it with you, Jordan, and Zach, and Mr. S as my witness. So that will happen. There will be me torturing myself with spicy food. It just depends on what it's going to be.
So just know if you're one of the, I think it's a little over 1,100 now, people that follow the list on X, you are part of the reason why Brett will be eating extra hot, spicy ramen. And you notice that I never at any point put my nose in there and said that I was going to do that. This is your bit. This is
It is.
awesome that you're doing this, but yeah, this is just going to be your thing, bud.
Yep. No, it is. And Mr. S has been cackling about it. I don't know if you saw the cartoon he made of me, but I actually laughed. I thought it was really well
Yeah, no, that
done.
was really good.
Yeah. But
Can we get that on here? Do we
uh
have access to that?
it is on Twitter. We can
X.
X Twitter. I call
We're
it
gonna get to a point. When is the point where people will know where you'll feel old calling it Twitter? Are we there? I
honestly
still
it'll
think saying Twitter is in normal vocabulary.
Yeah, it's still normal vocabulary. Honestly, I think it'll be. I hate to say it this way because I don't want to get political. I think it's going to be after the election seasons when everything calms down because it feels like things are still so high up that people are like kind of calling it Twitter to like go against Elon. I just call it Twitter because I've called it Twitter my whole life. So
Speaking of social media, and speaking of this show, at no point, I hope we get to a point. At no point we get to a level where Brett, you threaten to eat dog poop out of a red Solo cup live on air.
yeah, that was a dumb decision by that guy. For those who don't know, a Florida State fan put that if they lost to Boston College, he would eat dog crap, and he got called out by the Barstool guys, I believe, and
Yeah.
he went 0 dark 30, as they said, went ghost on Twitter, X, sorry, disappeared. But yeah, don't make promises you don't want to keep. So I was going to ask what you took out of college football the first week of the season. I guess this is technically week 2 for the Seminoles, but what I'm taking is they suck.
Yeah, they're not a good football team. Shout out to Tommy Castellanos and Boston College, former UCF quarterback. Now UCF, there are 3 quarterbacks out there, one at Boston College, one at Fresno State, and one at Oregon that all are former UCF quarterbacks that are better than the UCF quarterback right now. And we'll get to that at some point. But KJ Jefferson is looking quite like a tight end. and Gus Malzahn is back up to his old ways. But we're going to talk a little college football coming up here soon. But it was definitely fun for college football to kind of get that start and get that football feel before the NFL coming up this week.
Yeah, and the one thing Mr. S said to me as well, and it's something to keep in mind, is week one's all about getting that win. A lot of teams still don't know who their starters are if they're replacing people from last year. The other thing I will say, and I've been saying this to Gator fans for weeks, is your team's not that good either. And I think the Hurricanes showed that too. And I think Billy Napier might get fired before the end of the season for Florida.
Oh, if Billy Napier doesn't get fired before the end of the season, it's simply because they don't feel like one of his assistants can be the head coach for the remainder of the season, and they need a babysitter. He's a placeholder. I will be happily going up to the Swamp to watch UCF beat the Gators first week of October. And I think that this is going to be Billy Napier's final season in Florida. The two names that I've heard to look out for are Lane Kiffin and Deion Sanders, neither of which I'm sure they're going to necessarily get. But those are the two names that I've heard so far.
Is Deion even an upgrade yet?
He is, simply because you're taking him from Florida State and that Florida State brand. It's interesting because Colorado, it was an upgrade in part because they get Shedeur, who's going to be a top pick in the NFL draft. But I don't know if there are a lot of things you hear about the Deion brand behind closed doors with some of these guys. And I don't know, but I think that Florida is going to need to make a big splash. They kind of went the small school coach route with Napier. He was from Louisiana, Lafayette, if I remember correctly. Yep. And then I think this time they'll go for a bigger name and try to strike with kind of a popular type guy, and then give him the opportunity to hire assistants that'll be a much larger rate than what he gets to pay assistants at Colorado.
And speaking of Florida, did you see Dan Mullen is trolling them on social media too? Because yeah, basically retweeting everyone because everybody's like, Dan Mullen actually had a good record and you guys fired him. And
yeah, so. It's funny because sometimes schools think they're in an era where they're better than they are. And they fire a coach who's like on the cusp of getting there. And it actually ends up making them take a step back. I think that there are programs like a UCF that I think if they were to find a way to get out of Gus Malzahn and hire a young, fiery coach, they could take another step up. But I feel like that's just the era we're in, where I feel like a school like Florida, they shouldn't have gotten rid of a guy like Dan Mullen because they were at about the point that they should be at with him.
Yeah, and I see Mr. S said he learned on Twitter, Dylan Raiola, Cam Ward, Shedeur Samuels, Jalen Monroe, and Quinn Ewers and Carson Beck are all top 5 picks this year.
Right, you got through that so smoothly.
Yeah, kind of. Dylan Raiola is a true freshman, so he is not a top 5 pick this year, but he did look really good.
Yeah, Mr. S pointing out brightly that 6 quarterbacks are all ranked in the top 5. Yeah, okay. But I know that we have a couple predictions here. Let's get to our college football ones while we're on college football. Brett, who do you have winning the Heisman Trophy?
So I had to look at it, and you did mention one of these guys earlier. According to Vegas right now, Dylan Gabriel is the favorite. He's going to put up big numbers this year. I have a feeling Oregon's going to get upset along the way. They did not look good against Idaho overall, even though he did look good. I wanted to go Quinn Ewers, but again, I think their schedule is just super tough. So I think they're going to lose a game or two they shouldn't lose. I am actually going to give a lot of our fan base, as in our fellow Dolphin fans, some love because they are also Hurricane fans. And I am going to say Cam Ward's going to win the Heisman. First of all, the Hurricanes have an insanely easy schedule. And while doing that, I was reminded that Stanford and Cal are now part of the ACC, which I completely forgot about. But already saw Cam Ward look impressive. We had him for a while talking about him as a Heisman Trophy winner last year with Washington State. If he plays like he did against Florida all year, Miami might be the favorites to win the ACC. But yeah, I'm going to go Cam Ward because they don't really have a tough game for the next 5-6 weeks at best.
Yeah, I think that Cam Ward is a very popular pick right now. The guy I'm going to go with is another guy that had a really great week this week. When you start, like you said, I did the same thing. I looked at the schedules, and the name I'm actually going to go with is Jackson Dart of Ole Miss. They don't have Alabama on their schedule. They don't get Georgia till it's a home game late in the season. And they play Oklahoma along the way. And I think they're going to have an opportunity for Jackson to get a couple big Heisman moments. I think when you look at this Ole Miss team, it's probably Lane Kiffin's best team. They are really talented, especially at those skill positions. And I think a guy like Jackson Dart, as long as he plays borderline mistake-free football, he's probably not as flashy as a guy like Cam Ward, but I think he's definitely a guy that can make some push and put up the numbers to win the Heisman, and then having that Heisman moment at home against Georgia late in the season.
Yep. And just to throw out as well, I think if a Big 12 team ends up going undefeated and a player puts up big numbers, they may be the favorite as well. Two names to watch, of course, we talked about Shedeur Sanders. I don't know if Colorado's there yet to be undefeated, but Cam Rising is back for Utah.
Yes, he is.
And he might be the dark horse, in my opinion.
I think the thing that's going to hurt Cam Ward is, first of all, like you mentioned, Miami has an easier schedule. And I don't know if – I think the Florida game might kind of be his Heisman moment. And I think it might be a little too early to have your Heisman moment with the way the season works. And I also think that Cam Ward makes a lot of mistakes. He's going to have a lot more turnovers than a guy like Jackson Dart at Ole Miss.
Yeah. The other, like I said, I think a lot of these teams are just going to beat up on each other. Like Jackson Dart, I thought about him. I think I think Ole Miss is going to lose a couple games when we get later in the season. Just to give who Vegas has, Dylan Gabriel's the favorite, then Jackson Dart.
Oh, Jackson Dart moved up to second.
Yep.
Wow.
Carson Beck's third, Cam Ward's fourth, Jalen Milroe is fifth. Then you have, I'm going to mess up his name, but Nico Laeva from Tennessee, Quinn Ewers from Texas, Will Howard from Ohio State, who Ohio State's going to be good, but I don't think Will Howard's going to have the numbers as a passer to be the winner. I think if anybody from Ohio State wins, it's going to be the running back Henderson, and then Shedeur Sanders, and then Miller Moss. So it is still so early, but it's definitely it's more than likely going to be a quarterback. But I think most of those teams are just going to beat up on each other because they have some tough games right around the same time.
Yeah, this year, and we knew this coming in, this is a quarterback heavy year. This is going to be a quarterback heavy draft coming up. And this is an opportunity for a lot of teams to solidify the quarterback position in the NFL, and a lot of a big range of prospects. You got some pocket passers and you got some more mobile guys. I mean, you're going to see teams be able to hand pick kind of who they want at that quarterback position. But before we get there, let's turn to your pick for the national champion. You want to give me a national championship game and team, or just simply a team?
I'll give you the game.
Okay.
So, that's gonna make my roommate really happy. I think the title game will be Georgia versus Penn State.
Wow.
I think Penn State has a very favorable schedule. They made a change at offensive coordinator, bringing the Kansas's old offensive coordinator, and West Virginia was not a bad team last year, and just how much better Drew Aller and the offense looked, even from one game last year, is just night and day. And Penn State is honestly just loaded with with juniors this year. Aller, both the running backs, Singleton, I forget the other guy's name off the top of my head, but they always have tight ends. They got Julian Fleming from Ohio State to come in. They've got a very good offensive line still, even after losing Olu Fashanu. Abdul Carter, their linebacker, is probably a top 5 pick this year.
Yeah, he'll probably be one of the top defensive players off the board, depending on how you consider Travis Hunter.
True.
They looked really good in week 1. They
did.
looked really, really good. I liked West Virginia in that game, but Penn State, you knew from early on, they're different this year for sure.
Yeah. Abdul Carter, I'm going to say this. He might be better than Micah Parsons at the same point.
Yes.
Just going to say that. Georgia's winning the national title. They're just too talented. And for wondering why I didn't have Carson, anybody asking why either you or I didn't have Carson Beck winning the Heisman, I'm just going to say this. I think they're going to run it. He's going to average 2 touchdowns a game. I think you got to have like a 3, 4, 5 touchdown game at some point. I just don't think Carson Beck's going to have the numbers. Very, very good player. But I think, especially with Brock Bowers not there, they're going to go back to running the ball more.
Yeah.
But this is probably the most stacked. This is probably on par with, maybe not on par with Georgia's last national title game, but this is a very stacked team.
Yeah, I could totally see that. Mine, it's funny. I'm going to go with it's a SEC versus Big Ten matchup, but it's a different one. I'm going to go Ohio State versus Alabama. I think that you look at DeBoer, and people forget that he took Alabama to a national championship last year. And you look at Ohio State, and I think that this is the year they have to win. I think that this is the year. If they don't win this year with Will Howard, with that running back duo they have, with that receiving core they have, I don't know if he's going to have a better shot to win it than this. And I think that they do it. I think Ohio State beats Alabama. I think it's a close game, but I think Ohio State – what I like about Will Howard, although he's not going to be over the top, kill you, we don't have him as a Heisman guy right now. I like his athleticism, and I like him being able to run power. And I think that's going to help them late in games control the clock. And I see this Ohio State team a lot in the same way that people saw Michigan last season.
Yeah, they went all in. They got everybody to come back in. I think a booster said they spent like $100 million in NIL deals to put this team together. I don't know if those numbers may not be accurate, but they spent a lot of money on NILs this past year. So I honestly, even if they only have one loss, or even if they lose in the playoff, I think I think Ryan Day would be fired. I do think they lose. I think all their tough games except Michigan, and I'm not even sure if I'd say Michigan's on their level this year. You will never hear me say that ever again. But I think they have Oregon and Penn State both on the road, and I think that might be the difference.
Yeah. Do you have any possible surprises, any teams to watch out for, any other teams that you think can maybe creep in there before we kind of shift focus to the NFL?
To get to national title, like mentioned earlier, the only team I think could run, just because they're so well coached, they have a veteran team, is Utah. I like what they're doing. Eli Drinkwitz is doing at Missouri. I just don't think they have the talent. Even though I think their defensive end might be another top 5 pick too. They have a really good D end. They just don't have the quarterback. You need the quarterback to get there.
I like Brady Cook. I like him. I think he's a solid guy. And I think he's a guy that can play mistake-free football in big games. Yeah. But it's going to be interesting to see how they look in tough games down the stretch. I think it's just hard to look at a team like Missouri and think they can win a national championship. Yeah. But I can see it.
Ole Miss has a favorable schedule, I think. I think, like you said, they have Georgia, but they avoid a lot of the powerhouses. Ole Miss just has a history of fading.
But I wonder if the 12-team playoff is going to allow, now that some of those teams are going to be able to play in playoff games, how that's going to kind of take because you can lose a game and still make it.
Yeah. I mean, Notre Dame has a good team this year. I don't know I think it'd be more surprising if they didn't make the playoff.
Well, so the interesting thing about Notre Dame, and it's kind of a loophole they found in the playoff system, because the top 4 seeds in the playoffs, the teams that get a bye, the teams that get a bye have to be conference champions.
Mhm.
Now, I don't believe Notre Dame can technically be a conference champion, which almost guarantees them that number 5 spot, which
Mhm.
allows them to play the group of 5 team in round 1.
Yeah.
So Notre Dame's a team that I look at, and if they can finish number 5 in the country, they're essentially guaranteed a second round game against probably the number 1 team in the country, and then hey, let's see what we got, or the
Yeah.
number 4 team in the country.
Yeah. I mean, I think Washington will be good again. They lost a lot, but Jed Fish is a great recruiter. He was able to keep, I forget his name, but they had a Mississippi State grad transfer commit under Kalen DeBoer. He's still
Will
there.
Rogers.
Will Rogers, yep, there you go. So they still have him. Maybe like I think the wild card, just the Big 12 is so open this year that
UCF.
UCF could do it.
Hey man, I will say one thing, and we'll talk about him a lot more as the season goes on. RJ Harvey looked so good last week. Not old, he came back to school. He said he wasn't too happy with his draft slot and where he was projected to go, and came back and he really worked on his body, trimmed down, and he looked so much faster than he looked last season. With still that power. UCF has 4 really good running backs on that team. They're going to be interesting, and they're going to be a team if they can hang in games and keep the ball on the ground. They can hang with anybody in that Big East or Big 12.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Like I said, it's so open. Like, heck, Arizona look good, and they have that wide receiver who might be the best.
That wide receiver was unbelievable.
Yep. I know Jordan Reed from ESPN has him as the number 1 wide receiver in the country. And before Mr. S says anything, that's because many people are saying Travis Hunter is a cornerback in the NFL.
I think he's going to play a little both.
Right. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think this week's going to show us a lot more. I think he can too. I think he wants to do corner, but we'll see. I think it's going to be close. He's going to be top at both.
Yeah. All right. So let's shift to the NFL. This is what everybody's here for. Not really. I think some people prefer college football, but that's just me. All right. First, we will go with your surprise NFL team. This is a team that not many people are talking about that you think could make a potential run to the Super Bowl or far out project where they are projected right now.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd say this team would make a Super Bowl run, but I think they're going to make playoffs, and many people are taking them to finish last in the division, and it would be the Carolina Panthers. We said last year that Bryce Young got to it. They put him on a team that didn't have much help. I think everybody was shocked with how bad Frank Reich ended up being of a hire, but you put a young guy with no weapons around him, no offensive line, and then are shocked he struggles. I do think the Panthers have done a lot to right their ship. And no, Mr. S, I did not say the Panthers are going to win the Super Bowl. I said they would finish better than they were expected because many people are projecting them to finish last in their division. So listen, you dumbass.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, you're throwing out dumbassery.
Yes, I am. But yeah, no, I actually would not be shocked if Carolina finishes second or even wins their division, though.
Yeah, I'm going to go. I'm going to stay in the NFC. The team I'm going to give you, I think, is a team. While not many people think they have a chance to win their division, I think they're going to make it closer than people think. And that's the Seattle Seahawks. I think them bringing Mike McDonald in gives them that Ravens style, that Ravens defense is going to be really good for them.
Yep.
And I think that with that team coming in, Geno another year in that system, they have 3 good wide receivers. I think Smith and Jigba takes a huge step this year. They have 2 good running backs, even 3 if you want to count Kenny McIntosh. They have an improved offensive line. They have an improved defense. I think the Seattle Seahawks are a team that are going to make a push and really creep up on the 49ers and could even give them a run for that division title.
Yeah. Now, funny enough, I thought about Seattle as a choice too, but it seems like everybody is picking Seattle to still do fairly well. But yeah, we like I said, we've seen what a difference competent coaching will make for a young quarterback. So that's why I went with Carolina. So you came up with this list. I believe the next one, let you go first. Who is your MVP for the year?
I tried to be a little bit different with this pick, and it's a team that I also had on my list of surprise teams, kind of in that second slot. I think that the Cincinnati Bengals are going to win the division over the Baltimore Ravens this year, based on the way their schedule lines up. And I think if they do that with the Jamar Chase situation hanging over them, I think Joe Burrow wins the MVP.
I thought about Joe Burrow too. I'm going to be boring. I think Lamar's going to repeat.
Yeah, that's a easy pick.
Yeah, I just think this. I think this year the Ravens are just all in again. I think they know what they missed. I think the Ravens are going to end up being the number 1 seed for the playoffs.
I believe that.
So I think they're just a different level, different mindset right now. So that's where I think we are with them. So I think Lamar's repeating.
So yeah, we have Burrow and Lamar. We've gone easy. Quarterback. If you had to pick a player just off the top of your head, that's not really a top guy in the MVP conversation that you think could sneak in there, who do you think it is?
Well, if you're talking about in a national perception, as a Dolphins fan, I'm going to say Tua because I don't.
I
think
duh. I want to pick Tua. I want to pick the Dolphins with the Super Bowl. I want to pick. I wanted to pick UCF national champion 10 minutes ago.
Honestly, just based off of
honesty time with Brett.
Stat wise, because I'm not going to go I think Tua is going to be up there, but I think if you look stat and just to go off the beaten path a little bit, I think Jared Goff is going to get a lot of consideration.
Wow, you took my answer.
Yeah,
I think he could be. I definitely think he could be a guy that kind of raises himself into that next little tier there. He's right on the cusp, and I think guys like Tua and Jared Goff could both be guys that are in that conversation come the end of the year.
Yeah, and Mr. S saying Tua is the MVP. I think he will be right up there. I just think what'll happen is the Dolphins won't get the 1 seed. So I think
how dare you think that?
Yeah, what can you do? I just think the mindset also is different, where I think the Dolphins mindset is we got to get to the end of the year healthy. And I think they learned a lot last year where, again, I've been saying this so long, I think they realized in their minds a lot of the issues were play calling. So I think some of Tua's numbers may take a bit of a hit for team success. But I also think if we're up, they're going to take Tua out the game quicker than they did last year. I think they're going to try and protect people. I think the Dolphins are in Kansas City territory right now, and the fact that they're like, we don't care about the stats, we just want to get to the playoffs.
You know what? I'm going to say it. Screw it. You know what? Let's backtrack. Tua MVP.
Fair enough. Tua MVP.
Doing it. Clip it. But if Joe Burrow wins, clip that instead.
Clip all of it.
Yeah, clip all of it.
Yep.
Just clip it all. All right. Give me your – now we'll go like 3 in a row. It'll be your 2 conference championship games, your Super Bowl, and your Super Bowl winner.
So I actually do have the AFC championship game, and we'll get more into this as we preview a certain team we love to talk about. But I
wonder who that is.
Exactly. I do think the AFC championship game will be Baltimore versus Miami.
Well, this is going to be a boring podcast.
It is going to be a boring podcast, but I will explain that later too. There's some prerequisites to this that I think Miami has to hit, but I do think Miami has a very realistic chance to get to the conference championship, but I think they will lose to Baltimore in the AFC championship game. For the NFC, I think it'll be I actually think it'll be the Niners, and this was the tough one, but say the Niners and the Eagles. Again, I think the Eagles actually will beat the Niners. So you're going to have an all-bird Super Bowl. tri-state Super Bowl, if you will, Pennsylvania and Maryland, just missing Delaware there, and New York, all that good stuff.
Look at
But
the
I think,
geography guy over
yeah,
here.
but I think Baltimore is going to beat Philadelphia in the Super Bowl. Like I said, those two teams just have such a different mindset this year from everybody else. I think the Niners are up there too, but I think you're learning. While Brock Purdy is better than most of us want to give credit for, he does have his limitations. The Niners also had two very public holdouts. So Trent Williams and Brandon Ayuk are, even though they got those situations sorted out, they're not going to be probably game ready or ready to play early. So that could hurt seeding wise. And if the Niners don't have the 1 seed and they have to go to Philly, I think they're going to lose. So,
yeah, I have it slightly different on the NFC side. I have the Dolphins and Ravens on the AFC side. I agree. I think this is the year the Dolphins take a step forward. I think we're going to have a home playoff game, and we're going to win that home playoff game, win one more. As much as I want to say we're going to beat Baltimore in Baltimore, it's not going to be in Baltimore because, like I said before, I have the Bengals winning that division. So I think that the Ravens come to Miami, and I think that game is in Miami. Unfortunately, I think the Ravens win the AFC Championship game in Miami. I think it's a Lamar Jackson homecoming, and the Ravens go to the Super Bowl. But if the Dolphins win, let me quickly say that the Dolphins will beat the Ravens in that game. I can clip that instead because I believe in the Dolphins. You know what's crazy? We're at the point where I feel underwhelmed saying we're going to lose the AFC Championship game. I feel like I should be projecting us higher.
Yeah, I do too. Honestly, watching some of the previews, I'm surprised how many people, and I don't want to say they're low on the Dolphins because most people have us as a top 10 team making the playoffs or something, or relatively close to top 10. But it's not even because of who we lost. A lot of them are just like projecting us to lose because they said Tua, Tyreek, Jalen, Waddle, all that. They're saying we can't keep that pace up.
What I know about this team is we're going to be a lot more grown up than we were the last couple of years, and that's going to get us at least 1, maybe 2 playoff wins. But yeah, so I think that it's really a coin flip. I want to pick the Dolphins to beat the Ravens so bad.
Yeah, me too.
My brain tells me the Ravens, but I'm gonna pick the Dolphins. And then on the NFC side, this might be a little bit of a surprise, but I have the Lions and the Seahawks.
I wanted to pick the Lions but I just don't know. They did it last year, but
I think that this is the year. They have a very, very good team in every single facet of the game. And I think that they're going to cruise through the regular season, get home field, and win home games. I think the Lions beat the Seahawks. Now, I think what happens with the Seahawks is, like I said, I think they win the division over the 49ers. I think they split with the 49ers, and then there's a big game at home. They beat the 49ers in the playoffs, and then they lose at Detroit in the NFC Championship game. I think the Super Bowl is either Lions, Dolphins, or Lions, Ravens. If it's Lions, Dolphins, I'm going to pick the Dolphins because we've made it this far, so I'm picking the Dolphins.
Yeah.
If it's Lions, Ravens, I think the Lions, if you think back to that game last season, the Ravens dominated the Lions. They crushed them in Baltimore. I think that the Lions are going to use that game as motivation, and I think if the Super Bowl is Baltimore and Detroit, the Detroit Lions win the Super Bowl.
Good pick that. It's funny, our minds work so much alike because I wanted to pick Seattle and Detroit as well, but I'm like, I just don't think either of those teams are quite ready yet. But
yeah, but like we're making bold takes, and
that's fair. But I do like that. I do like that. And shout out to Dan Campbell because so many people talk shit on him when he got hired to be the head coach, and look what he's done.
Yeah, I love Dan Campbell. I'm proud of that guy. And the last time I said I was proud of that guy, I got told that I jinxed them, but.
You said it at halftime when they were up, and then they ended up losing.
You're saying it right now on a Tuesday night. You're still proud of Dan Campbell, and they lost that game, and you're still proud of him. I think you saying that right there validates me not jinxing them. Yeah. Thank you. That case is closed, and we can move on. Let's get to the Dolphins specific because we have the Dolphins logo behind us, and we haven't really talked about the Dolphins as a team, and then really as a week one opponent in Jacksonville. So why don't you tell me for the Dolphins overall as a team? I know we're about to put out an article on listpodcast.com tomorrow, I believe, with some Dolphins preview stuff. So I will stay away from those questions that people could find on our website. But who is your surprise Miami Dolphin, and who is your disappointment as a Miami Dolphin this season?
So surprise, I am going to say, just because we pick on him so much, I think Liam Eichenberg is going to be serviceable. So it's weird because we came into the year, or came out of the last year into the offseason worried about where we were player-wise. And I think a lot of that's still valid, but I actually come away thinking our team in many places has better depth than we give credit for. Offensive line is not one of those places, but I think at this point it's cheating, but I'm going to say basically there's nowhere to go. The expectation for Liam Eichenberg are so low. If he's even just okay, he's the biggest. And you can't tell me I'm wrong. If he is just okay, is he not just the biggest surprise on the team?
Sure.
Yeah.
If you say so. So I had two guys on my surprise list. Did you give a disappointment or no? I'll go surprise, then you'll go disappointment.
Yeah, I didn't give disappointment yet.
So I'll go my surprise, and then I'll go my disappointment and throw it back to you because I think we'll find this funny. I gave two surprises. My offensive surprise is actually Robert Jones. I think that on that left guard side, I think he's going to fill in very nicely, and I think he's going to be a guy when we go into next season that we feel comfortable starting at that left guard spot. I think he's going to solidify that left side, whether it's Teron Armstead or whether it's Patrick Paul, depending on health. I think that whoever that guy is and Robert Jones are going to be a side of the football that we're not going to worry about. And on the defensive side of the ball, I know he's a good player, but I think his signing was under the radar. I'm going to go with Kendall Fuller. I think that people are going to realize – I feel like a lot of people, when they talk about the Dolphins across the league, they don't realize we added Kendall Fuller. He's going to be a serious upgrade compared to what we had outside last season. And I think when Jalen Ramsey misses a game here or misses a drive there, I think Kendall Fuller is going to adequately be that cornerback one. And I expect a huge season on the defensive side of the ball from Kendall Fuller in this Anthony Weaver defense.
All right. And then
I'll spoil my disappointment. It's Liam Eichenberg. I think if you would have gone back and look, I hope that we look back in 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 20 weeks when we win the Super Bowl, and we're like, holy crap, we just won a Super Bowl with Liam Eichenberg.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there is more of a likelihood that Ghost is on here in 6 weeks screaming about the fact that Liam Eichenberg is our starting guard, or that we're trying to patchwork that together because we convinced ourselves that Liam Eichenberg could start.
Yeah, because we all know Ghost is such a even-keeled guy. I don't think he'd be yelling.
Yeah, oh no, he might be like quietly whispering it into the screen about Liam Eichenberg.
Yeah, the other surprise too, and just to offensive line, is I think everybody's forgot, because he's been hurt this preseason, that we've signed Aaron Brewer. I think Aaron Brewer is going to do very well as a center.
He better.
Yes. Otherwise, the Andrew Meyer saga starts before anybody.
I like Andrew Meyer.
I do like him. I do think he did, like we said last week, talking to Eric Smith, Jordan. Andrew Meyer did really well in the preseason.
Yeah.
And he did better than I even thought he would. Like, I thought he was practice squad, and he looked good enough that I actually would say, hey, maybe move Brewer to right guard and put him at center instead of Ike. But for disappointment, this is the one I actually did too. One is a disappointment just in terms of the hype they're getting, and one is more, I think this guy's going to get benched this year.
Let's hear it.
So for hype, when you look at where people are telling to draft him in fantasy and how people are talking about him, Devin Achane. He's going to be splitting carries. You have people saying he's going to be a top. I've seen people say, yeah, he's going to take carries from Mostert. He's going to be a top 20 fantasy guy. He's going to have big plays. I'm not saying he's not. I'm not saying he's a bust or anything. But when you talk, especially from the fantasy side of things, I don't think he's going to live up to the hype. And I actually would.
What's funny about that is people are saying from a fantasy perspective that Achane's a top player, Mostert's a sleeper as far as like a veteran that you can get in the middle rounds, and then Jalen Wright's a guy you can draft and win your league. Like all three of those things can't be true, and very, very likely two of the three aren't going to be true. Yes. Now I'm in a league with a guy who's a big Dolphin fan, and I hope he's listening to this or hears this at some point. But he drafted all three of them. He drafted Achane in the second. He drafted like Mostert in the seventh, and he drafted Wright late in the draft.
Yeah, I would. Like I said, I wouldn't be. Yeah, so it's more just.
Brett, have you heard of a guillotine league?
No.
Okay, so I have in 15 minutes. I have the sixth pick in a 16-team guillotine league that's coming up, and this is my new favorite type of fantasy league. I look forward to it every year. 16 guys draft, or ladies. It's 16 people draft their teams. And each week, the team in the league with the lowest score gets eliminated from the league, and all of their players become free agents.
That sounds interesting.
And the league continues until there's one person left at the end, and the one person at the end gets the entire pot of money.
That'd be fun. That sounds like it's fun.
I have a draft coming up here in 15 minutes that we'll see who I take with the number 6 overall pick.
Gotcha.
Back to Dolphin running backs.
Yep. As for disappointment, I'm going to say Cater Kohu. Like Cater, I know a lot of people are projecting him to bounce back. I would not be shocked if, when you look at how good Storm Duck's been this preseason, how good Ethan Bonner's been, how good Sierra Neal's been, and then Cam Smith waiting in the wings, I think he's losing that. I think he's going to lose that nickel spot.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see who takes that nickel spot from him, but he's a guy I definitely could see falling out of favor real quick.
Yeah, honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if it's Ethan Bonner because
love that.
Yeah, he looks very physical. He's a very smart player. He's not like, I know he's been playing boundary, but he looks like he can play slot and just add a little extra.
Yeah. So if you're out there and you're wondering, well, you didn't do the team record or the team MVP or the stuff we did last year, we're putting out an article again on listpodcast.com tomorrow that Mr. S has done a great job putting together with not only Brett's opinion, not only my opinion, but the opinion of all the people back here that help with the list. And we're going to have more content coming up there in the next couple of weeks. But let's shift focus, Brett. It's that time of year where we get to talk about an opponent that matters. The Jacksonville Jaguars bust down to town. The Dolphins, Jaguars, week 1. Start us off. How do you feel going into this game on Sunday?
So I feel pretty confident. At first, it was because I had no clue of what the Jaguars were. Like, honestly, I don't pay attention to them at all. But doing a little bit of a deep dive into their team, they do have some changes. They had a bit of a disappointment last year. I know that Trevor Lawrence got hurt towards the end of the year, but I think they were a team, and it happens every year. You have a team that overperforms. People think they're closer to being contenders than they actually are, and it ends up hurting them. And
just a pause because you said you didn't know what a Jaguar is.
I saw
it's
that.
Jaguar and not Jaguar. But it is a large, heavily built cat that has a yellowish brown coat with black spots, found mainly in the dense forests of Central and South America, and occasionally one in Jacksonville.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. S. But looking at him, and speaking of Mr. S, to actually thank him, I did ask him to get the PFF rankings for Jacksonville from last year. their one elite player is actually Josh Hines Allen, formerly just Josh Allen. He had, I believe, 17 sacks last year.
Do you think he changed his name in part because of the other Josh Allen?
Probably. He won't admit it, but I think so.
That was at least 1%.
Yeah. No, I'd agree with that. Trayvon Walker, who was the former first overall pick over Aiden Hutchinson, he did have 10 sacks last year, but he was the Jaguars' 25th rated defender. So PFF doesn't like him. Looking at his stats, he's not a good tackler, and he can't perform well or he doesn't perform well against the run. So he's basically what people think Chop Robinson is. but he's still dangerous. So you have two very good edge rushers that you have to deal with. And I was today years old when I learned that the Jaguars also signed Eric Armstead from the Niners. Looking at the Jaguars depth chart, it looks like they switched from a 3-4 to a 4-3 this year. So it's going to be more straightforward. Their offensive line, there's questions marks. Cam Robinson's the left tackle. He's hurt quite a bit. They traded for Ezra Cleveland last year. I liked him in a system like the Dolphins have. I don't know if I like him in a system that the Jaguars have. They did sign Mitch Morse from Buffalo, I believe he's at this past year. In the offseason, they have Brandon Scherf, who is, when healthy, an elite right guard. And they drafted Anton Harrison at right tackle last year. He's entering his second year. Looking at the chart provided, I don't even see him on the chart that Mr. S provided. So that tells you how he did. He was also very lowly ranked as an offensive lineman. They also lost Calvin Ridley. Their top returning offensive weapon is what's the tight end's name?
Evan Ingram.
Evan Ingram. I was going to say Melvin, and I was like, that's not right. So Evan Ingram, they drafted Brian Thomas Jr. in the first round. Christian Kirk returns, but he is always injured. Brian Thomas Jr. has been a stud, as Mr. S said. I am not a fan of him, and I was very open about that. But hats off to him. But asking any rookie to come in and be the number one wide receiver is always difficult. And Evan Ingram always has had an issue with stone hands, despite being fairly reliable in Jacksonville. So looking at him, I do like the matchup in the trenches. I actually think we have advantages on both trenches because their best players are going to be going up against arguably our two best offensive linemen. There is some concern with the interior going up against Armstead, and I do like their one linebacker. Let me just look up his name.
You got an Armstead versus Armstead matchup out there, huh?
Maybe more like Armstead versus Eichenberg. But they do have a Foyesade Alakun, who's been a top tackler in the league for a couple of years.
Brett, can you go back and try to say that 5 times?
No, I cannot, and no, I won't.
Do it. Try it.
No. Foyesade Alakun, Foyesade Alakun, Foyesade Alakun, Foyesade Alakun, Foyesade Alakun.
I like that. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm glad you had fun with that. But he's a good player, but he's more of a thumper and than someone you can hide in coverage. I know they had Devin Lloyd, who I liked a lot in the draft, but I don't really think he's done too much. And their secondary seems to be big play one way or the other. They're either going to make a big play or they're going to give up a big play. But I do think we match really well with the Jaguars. So I think it's going to be a fairly comfortable win for us. I'll say 34-10.
Yeah, I do think they can score some points. I think they're going to have the ability to give us some problems, especially with Brian Thomas's size. I think ETN is poised for a big year. But I think, like you said, the way their secondary is built is really a great setup for our weapons. I expect Tua to have a huge day. I expect us to run the ball well, especially on the outside. And then I expect Tyreek and Waddle to do Tyreek and Waddle things. I also have the Dolphins scoring a lot of points, but I also think the Jaguars score some points. I think it will be closer to a 41-24 final with the Dolphins winning. And I think that after this game, we sit here a lot like we were early on last year and say, wow, like we're on the cusp of something possibly special here. The line, like Mr. S just said, is 3.5. I think that's in part because it's opening day. I think the Jaguars are a team that the public usually likes. I think the Dolphins are a team that they usually don't. I think that is going to be a comfortable win for the Dolphins. And I think those who stress it after will be like, why did I stress buying the hook or doing something like that? Yeah. And because I just told people not to buy the hook, we're definitely winning by 3.
Yep. So I will say this as well. The one thing I think may keep it close is the fact we don't know what we're getting from our edge players on defense this early. Is Jalen Phillips ready for a bigger workload? Are we going to get the Agba we had when he first came to Miami, or are we going to have the Emmanuel Agba from the last 2 years? How much are Mo Kamara and Chop Robinson going to be relied on? So in short, I think they may be able to run on us if they stay committed. But Doug Peterson is an Andy Reid disciple, and you know what they all have in common? They like to stop running the football. So that is what I am betting on.
Yeah, if I'm the Jaguars, I'm giving the ball to Etienne a lot, and I'm also giving the ball to Tank Bigsby a lot. I think that they're both guys that I'd be giving a lot of touches and keep the ball out of Trevor Lawrence's hands and be situational about that. But Trevor Lawrence is a guy that I find to be somewhat overrated, and I think that'll show in week 1 against an Anthony Weaver defense. I think if I'm giving the Jaguars advice on how to beat us, I think it's running the ball 50 times.
Yeah. You got to run it, although I do think having Jordan Brooks and David Long and Jordan Poyer now in the middle of the defense makes a huge difference. You want to run on the edge with Etienne's going to win it, but we just don't know what our edge defenders are going to be, at least early in this season. Now, what I will also say is Mr. S said earlier, pound it, and we'll get to that in a second as he just reminded. I'm going to throw 2 quarterback stats up there for you, Jordan, and I want you to guess who they are. The first quarterback is
it cheating if I already know who they are?
Yes, but we'll still do it for fun, just for the people who haven't seen it. The first quarterback has a record of 20-28. The second one, 19-29. The passer rating for quarterback 1 is 85.5. For number 2 is 85.4. Pass touchdowns to interceptions ratio, 55-35 for QB1, 55-33 for QB2. Pass yards for QB1, 12,204 pass yards. Or it's pass yards plus rush yards, excuse me. So that's total yards. And then for QB2, it's 11,992. And the yards per attempt for both is 6.7. You already know the answer. So do you want to tell them who QB1 is?
I'm actually going to put it up here so that people get the visual. If you give me 1 second, I believe this is it right here. And we will put it up with us. One of them is Trevor Lawrence, and the other one is Daniel Jones. And I'll let those on here view that for a couple minutes because it's funny how the narrative on 2 quarterbacks could be so very different, even if their numbers are quite the same. And I would even probably say that if you took that out and added the rushing stats as their own, because it does look like it's just passing TDs on there, you might actually take Daniel Jones in a box, numbers-wise, over Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah. And this isn't really to insult Trevor Lawrence, the player. I do think you and I both agree.
Is it to hype up Daniel Jones? Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, it's exactly that. No, he was definitely overrated coming into the draft. Like, he lived off the hype as a recruit because he was a top recruit, lived off that freshman year at Clemson. Not that he was a bad prospect, but I've heard so many people in the national media say he's on the Mount Rushmore of quarterback prospects in NFL history. And I wouldn't put him as a top 5 prospect of all time. Would you, for quarterback?
I think the one I remember being crazier than any other was Andrew Luck.
Yeah, but I'd put him as a top 5 all time.
Yeah. Trevor Lawrence is up there off the top of my head. I think Tua's probably up there a little near there. I could go like Tua pre-injury and then Burrow post Tua's injury as one slot. And I'm just talking in our lifetime. So
yeah, I would say, who would you say the top 5 quarterback prospects? I would say, let's go back to 2000.
Off the top of my head, I'm gonna go Luck.
I'd agree.
Cam Newton,
Okay.
because he was such a freak coming off of that Auburn national championship season.
To go with that, I'd put Mike Vick up there.
Okay, you can put Mike Vick up there.
I
That's
agree
a
with
good one
Mr.
by
S.
Mr. S in the chat there. Matthew Stafford was up there. People forget now that he's older how great of a prospect he was. Although he didn't go number 1, I'll put RG3 in that category.
Yeah.
He was a very, very polarizing figure. I think
Sam Bradford was considered can't miss.
Wow, Sam Bradford was considered can't miss. Is Carson Palmer in that since 2000 range?
2003. Yeah, he was 2003. I'd say all these guys were better prospects than Trevor Lawrence was, and that's just my opinion.
For sure.
So to say he was Mount Rushmore when he's not even top 5. Eli too, yeah.
Here, I'm looking at Fox Sports did this. February 29th, so 6 months ago. They had Andrew Luck number 1, Mike Vick number 2, Matthew Stafford number 3, Cam Newton number 4, Joe Burrow number 5.
That's fair.
And then to finish out the top 10, Caleb Williams 6, RG3 7, Trevor Lawrence 8, Deshaun Watson 9, Patrick Mahomes 10. And I think that Patrick Mahomes is a little overstated.
Watson, and here's the thing, when most people didn't even have Watson and Mahomes in the top, as top picks back then. So I don't know if people remember this. You probably remember this, Jordan. That draft, it was Mitch Trubisky and everybody.
It was Mitch Trubisky.
Yeah. And I thought I was surprised how little hype Deshaun Watson got. Patrick Mahomes didn't really get. I didn't even realize most people consider him a first-round pick until the draft night. Yeah. But the point also is to show, like you said, just narrative. You have people on national TV still calling Trevor Lawrence the prince, and not condescendingly. And Daniel Jones is widely considered to have one of the worst contracts in the NFL. So that just shows you perception versus reality.
Yeah, it's crazy how that works. As I'm coming up on the clock here with my first round pick.
Yeah. But while you're doing that, I'll go back to what Mr. S had said, pound the rock. And that was for us, and I do agree. Something I do think, and we've talked about this multiple times, Jordan, and just to reiterate our first-time listeners as well, and our returning listeners, a big criticism I had of the Dolphins last year is we were stat chasing. The game that everybody talks about and we can point to, and most people want to forget about, is the Tennessee Titan game.
For sure.
Where we had, 4 trips inside to 10 and didn't get a single touchdown.
What we had was ridiculous.
Yeah. So, and I think that happened too many times. We talk about the Dolphins not being physical enough. Whether we agree with the Finns or not, to me, I think they thought it was the other options outside of Waddle and Tyreek Hill. Many fans think it's the offensive line. We're not going to get into that again because we're probably going to bitch about the offensive line all year, on and off. Let's be honest there. But I do think the Finns gambled that Durham Smythe could be a reliable number 1 tight end. And I think I saw earlier, he caught 33 of 43 targets. So he could catch, but he wasn't a threat to do anything. And I think not having that receiving threat at tight end made a difference. You and I joke a lot. We missed Trent Sherfield because we didn't have that number 3 wide receiver. Now,
those were dark times.
Yeah. Now, it may be OBJ when he gets healthy. It may be, I think you and I agree, Malik Washington will probably be reliable. Maybe Braxton Berrios jumps back, but I think at the end of the day, we just tried too hard to get Tyreek and get Tua those record numbers, and I think it hurt us. I think, and the advanced stats show this, when we run the ball, we're actually a top 5 running team.
Yeah.
We are a top running team. So I kind of have changed my mind from that we're not physical enough to we need the right mindset. And I think as long as we stay more balanced in the running game, the sky's the limit for us. And I actually think even with questions on the offensive line, easiest way to fix that is run the ball. So I'm just going to say this. Love Tua, but got to just get touchdowns. And if you got to do it the 3 yards in the cloud of dust, I think we have the people to do it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think as we embark on this season, I mean, it's our second season doing this. And we were talking about how last season felt like the most anticipated Dolphin season in a very long time. This year, it feels a lot like it felt. And Brett, I know that you're not the biggest Florida Panthers fan, but it feels like this season going into the Florida Panthers season for me, like last year, it was, oh, this is really cool. We have all these expectations. And then this year, it's okay, we've been there before. Now it's time to actually start winning and producing.
Yeah. Well, I think what helps is the national media continues to overrate our beloved rivals, the New York Jets.
Well, that's always fun. I love that for us.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to say it again. They're going to be finished closer to the Patriots at 4 than they are going to be to us and the Bills.
Yeah, I was looking at the Bills depth chart. I think it was yesterday, and that defense is really, really thin.
It is.
They're going to have some trouble defensively. That's one matchup to look for this weekend. If we're talking about a potential upset, is Arizona beating Buffalo. That's one that I can see. Buffalo's defense, Arizona coming in with a lot of hype. I could see Arizona going to Buffalo and beating them.
Yeah, I could see it too, honestly. It's one of those things where if you don't – windows are so small in the NFL that unless you start hitting on picks, and Buffalo has started to miss on more and more picks, it starts to bite you. So, but as we pass the hour mark, Jordan, any other thoughts you want to provide?
Brett, it is just going to be so nice to have football back for what is the better part of the next 20 weeks. I know that you're going to tell us as we get off here about something that we have going on. I don't know if we want to say it or we want to keep it under wraps. I personally think we should keep it under wraps. But if you want to discuss it, we can discuss it. But looking forward, I'm just excited for fantasy football, for real football, and to have something to look forward to on the weekends again.
We will keep it under wraps, but I will tell everybody, if you're a draft fan, you don't want to miss Thursday. That's all I'm going to say about
Thursday,
that.
special start time.
Yeah, 2:30 special start time. It's going to be a bit of a pain, but we gotta make it work.
Yeah, maybe we'll record it and then like air it at a later date or something. I don't know. We'll figure out how to make that work.
Yep. And then of course another change this year is I think we're actually going to start trying to do live on a Sunday games. We're going to try and do live afterwards to get the raw reactions right.
Yeah, I think Sunday night's the best time to do it. I think that lets us talk about it right away. Plus, it allows us to decompress after some games. We might have some looser reactions, to say the least, after games. But I think that'll be fun. And I also think that it'll be a good way for us to balance out the week. We talk about the previous game on the night after the game, and then later on in the week preview the following week. So I think that's a great way for us to get back to those 2-night-a-week schedules while doing it the right way.
Yep. All right. And I think that's a good time to end this so Jordan can focus on his draft. So
I got Bijan Robinson at 6 somehow. Now, like I said, how this league works is the lowest score each week gets eliminated. And somebody took Jamar Chase, number 3 overall. So if he doesn't play this week, I'm going to be laughing at this guy whose name is Chaz.
Yeah. All righty. Well, good luck to you on that.
Thank you. No, but in all seriousness, this is a ton of fun. Thank you for those that finally got us over 1,000 followers. This is quite it's an amazing experience. It's quite fun. And I'm just grateful for all the people behind the scenes and on scene that make this thing happen. So the 1,000 followers is a celebration to us and a celebration to this new year that we have going up.
Yep. And despite what Mr. Joe Shad says, you can support all the people living in their mother's
Yeah.
basements in Central Florida.
What are we doing? Why are we taking shots at people? I think that was to reference what Billy Napier said. I think Billy Napier said something about a guy in a basement in rural Central Florida, which you see UCF's NIL fund is now selling rural Central Florida T-shirts.
Yeah. And to be clear, our admin doesn't live in his mom's basement in Central Florida. He lives in his mom's attic up in Wales. So
yeah, exactly. But yeah, for Brett, for Mr. S in an attic in Wales, and for all the other people in the back, including Zach, I am Jordan. Thank you for being a part of this journey with the list. Go Dolphins. Go Knights. I guess the Wolverines are acceptable too. I'm Jordan. I think I already said that. Zach, hit our music.
Boom.